Before we begin, I want you to know that your presence here means something. In a world that rarely pauses to ask why we trip ourselves up, you've chosen to look deeper. That curiosity, that willingness to sit with uncomfortable truths, is rarer than you think. There's something profound waiting in the shadows of our own behavior. It happens in the middle of the night. You're lying there staring at the ceiling, replaying the same scenario over and over. The job interview you didn't prepare for. The relationship you pushed away just when it was getting real. The dream you talked yourself out of before you even tried. And somewhere in that dark space between sleep and consciousness, a question surfaces that you can barely stand to ask. Why do I keep doing this to myself? We have names for it. Self-sabotage, getting in your own way, shooting yourself in the foot. But those phrases feel too clean, too simple for something so devastatingly complex. Because this isn't just about making bad choices or lacking willpower. This runs deeper. This is about the invisible architecture of fear that lives inside your nervous system, quietly orchestrating your life from the shadows. You see, there's something your brain doesn't want you to know, something it's been hiding from you since you were old enough to dream. Every time you get close to what you really want, every time you stand on the edge of genuine change, an ancient alarm system starts screaming. Not with words, but with sensations. The tightness in your chest, the sudden exhaustion, the overwhelming urge to scroll through your phone instead of taking that next step. Your brain has convinced itself that the familiar hell is safer than the unknown heaven, and so you find yourself trapped in patterns that feel automatic, inevitable, like watching yourself from the outside as you destroy the very things you claim to want most. But here's what's fascinating. Research shows us that self-sabotage isn't random. It's not weakness or character defect. It's a highly sophisticated defense mechanism that your psyche developed to protect you from something it perceives as more dangerous than failure. Success, change, the vulnerability of actually getting what you want. Studies reveal that approximately 20% of adults engage in chronic procrastination, one of the most common forms of self-sabotage. But this isn't about poor time management. This is about terror. The terror of being seen, of having to live up to your potential, of discovering that maybe you really are capable of extraordinary things. Think about the last time you sabotaged yourself. Really think about it. What was happening in your life? What opportunity itself? What dream was presenting was becoming too real, too possible? Because self-sabotage doesn't strike randomly. It has perfect timing. It shows up precisely when you're about to break through to something new. Your nervous system, that ancient survival mechanism, doesn't distinguish between a saber-toothed tiger and a promotion. It doesn't know the difference between physical danger and emotional vulnerability. All it knows is that change equals uncertainty, and uncertainty once meant death. So it does what it's always done. It protects you by keeping you small, keeping you stuck, keeping you safe in the prison of the known. Neuroscientists have discovered something profound about how our brains process uncertainty. When faced with the unknown, the same neural pathways light up that respond to physical pain. Your brain literally experiences uncertainty as injury. That's why the prospect of change can feel like torture, even when you consciously know it's what you want. But there's something even more complex happening beneath the surface. Something psychologists call ambivalence. You simultaneously want and fear the same thing. You crave success while terrifying yourself with thoughts of what success might demand. You long before they can dissap for love while sabotaging relationships oint you. You dream of freedom while clinging to the chains you know. This internal war creates a kind of psychological paralysis. One part of you reaches forward while another part pulls back. And in that tension, in that impossible space between desire and terror, self-sabotage thrives. It becomes the compromise your psyche makes between wanting and fearing, between growing and staying safe. The perfectionist who rewrites the same paragraph 40 times isn't seeking excellence, they're hiding. The professional who stays in a job they hate isn't lacking ambition. They're protecting themselves from the possibility of failing at something that matters. The person who destroys every good relationship isn't afraid of love. They're afraid of the devastation that could follow if that love disappears. Before we continue, let me pause for just a moment. Your willingness to sit with these uncomfortable truths, to look honestly at the patterns that trip you up, that's courage. In a world that celebrates quick fixes and surface solutions, you're here doing the harder work of understanding. That matters more than you know. There's something waiting for you in this exploration. Now let's go deeper into the mechanics of how this happens, because understanding the why isn't enough. You need to see the how. How does your psyche actually orchestrate these moments of self-destruction? How does it convince you to step away from the very edge of breakthrough? It starts with what psychologists call psychological homeostasis. Your mind has a set point, a familiar range of emotions, circumstances, and identity that feels like home. Even if that home is uncomfortable, even if it's limiting, it's known. A known feels safe to the part of your brain that's been keeping humans alive for millennia. When you start to venture outside that familiar range, when success becomes too real or change too imminent, your psyche begins to whisper, not with words, but with sensations, with sudden shifts in energy, with inexplicable urges that feel completely reasonable in the moment. The urge to check social media instead of finishing the project. The sudden need to reorganize your entire closet when you should be making that important phone call. The overwhelming desire to pick a fight with someone you love right when things are going well. These aren't random impulses. They're precisely calibrated responses designed to pull you back into the gravitational field of the familiar. Your psyche becomes a master manipulator, using your own thoughts and feelings against you with surgical precision. Consider Sarah, a talented writer who spent 3 years working on a novel. Every time she gets close to finishing a chapter, she suddenly becomes convinced it's terrible. She deletes paragraphs, starts over, or abandons the project for weeks. To the outside world, it looks like perfectionism or writer's block. But something more sophisticated is happening. Her fear of completion, of having to share her work and risk judgment, manifests as an inability to ever finish anything. The cruel genius of self-sabotage is that it feels logical, even necessary in the moment. Sarah genuinely believes her work isn't good enough. The professional staying in the wrong job truly feels guilty about leaving their loyal employer. The person who ruins relationships actually convinces themselves they're protecting their partner from future disappointment. This is where the concept of self-verification comes into play. Research shows that people have a profound need for their external reality to match their internal beliefs about themselves. If you believe deep down that you don't deserve success, then success becomes psychologically threatening. It creates cognitive dissonance, a painful mismatch between what's happening and what feels true, so your mind gets creative. It finds ways to restore the familiar narrative. The person who believes they're destined to struggle will unconsciously create struggle, even in the midst of opportunity. The individual convinced they're unlovable will behave in ways that push love away, then point to the resulting loneliness as proof of their unworthiness. But here's where it gets even more complex. Sometimes self-sabotage isn't about fear of failure at all. Sometimes it's about fear of success, because success brings visibility, responsibility, expectations. It means you can't hide behind mediocrity anymore. It means people will be watching, judging, waiting for you to prove you deserve what you've achieved. The imposter syndrome that plagues high achievers isn't just self-doubt. It's a sophisticated form of self-sabotage that keeps them perpetually questioning their worthiness, ensuring they never fully embrace their capabilities. They achieve despite themselves, then spend their energy convincing everyone, including themselves, that their success was accidental, temporary, or undeserved. Your nervous system doesn't understand the difference between being chased by a predator and being offered a promotion. Both situations trigger the same ancient alarm system that floods your body with stress hormones and prepares you for fight, flight, or freeze. The difference is that in modern life, these responses often look like procrastination, perfectionism, or self-destruction. This is why logic rarely works against self-sabotage. You can't think your way out of something that operates below the level of conscious thought. You can't reason with a nervous system that's convinced your survival depends on staying small. So here's what I want you to understand as we reach the end of this exploration. Self-sabotage isn't your enemy. It's not a character flaw or a sign of weakness. It's a misguided protector, a part of your psyche that learned long ago to keep you safe by keeping you small. And now that you can see it clearly, now that you understand the invisible machinery behind those moments of self-destruction, something shifts. The patterns don't disappear overnight. The fear doesn't magically vanish. But awareness changes everything. Because when you catch yourself reaching for that familiar escape, when you feel that ancient alarm system starting to scream, you'll recognize it for what it is. Not truth, but terror. Not wisdom, but the echo of old wounds trying to keep you from new possibilities. The next time you stand on the edge of breakthrough, and feel that familiar urge to step back, remember this moment. Remember that your resistance isn't proof you're not ready. It's proof that you're exactly where you need to be. On the threshold of something that scares the part of you that's been running the show for far too long. You came here tonight because something in you is ready to stop hiding. Something in you is tired of playing small. Trust that part. It knows the way forward, even when the path feels impossible to see. Your healing, your growth, your breakthrough. It's not waiting for you to be fearless. It's waiting for you to be brave enough to feel the fear and choose differently anyway. The prison of the familiar can only hold you as long as you believe it's keeping you safe. But you know better now. You know the real danger isn't in changing. It's in staying exactly where you are,